Okay, I feel like that's a thing now. I think we brought that back, George.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Welcome to A Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
And I'm George.
This is our Thursday webcast. Today is June 11th. We are doing our webcast every Monday and Thursday throughout the quarantine. Check us out at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. All of our past shows are on our YouTube page under the name A Nice Place to Brew. We have a podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew, that's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all those other places you get your podcast from. And check us out on social media. We'd like to welcome Brian from Unpossible Mead in Dwight, Illinois, to the webcast. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Did I have the city right? I didn't cross-reference that. Dwight?
Yep, like
Right
Dwight
on.
Schrute.
Dwight Schrute. Dwigged. Yeah.
Meadery a meadery in business since September of 2018. Did I have that right?
Yes.
That's great. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What was the initial appeal to Mead specifically, and what led that to the opening of Unpossible?
Well, I watched a friend brew beer in his driveway, and I was like, "Oh, he makes great beer." Wanted to watch him make beer, and I was like, "Oh, I want to help." And he's like, "Okay, sure." And normally for him, a brew day is just buddies hanging out, drinking in the driveway. And I'm like, "No, I kind of want to get what's going on because
I can relate."
Geeking out, and
Yeah.
then by the end of the brew day, I was like, "This is a lot of damn work. I don't want to brew beer." So
I can relate to that on so many levels. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So I started making cider for a few months, and it was okay, nothing great. I was like, well, what else is out there that you can throw yeast at and make something out of? So I just poked around online, and Mead kind of caught my fancy. It's like, how hard is it to screw this up? It's honey, it's water, and yeast. And I got lucky on my first batch, and I got hooked because the rest of them for a while were hot garbage. So I probably poured close to 75 gallons of Mead as a home brewer down the drain. And that's a lot of money in honey. And those little ladies that go out and flap their wings and get that nectar and turn into honey, that's a lot of work that got wasted. So,
Oh my gosh,
it happens, but it's how you learn. And I wish I didn't, but you know what? You learn more from your failures than you do your successes. So
well said.
True.
Well said. No, I think any home brewer out there who's being honest with themselves has had batches go bad, and either they just kind of gutted it out and drank what was left, just in an effort to not say that things went wrong, or you just kind of raised your hand and said, "Yeah, I didn't do this one right," and just had to pitch it.
Yep.
Yeah. We've all been there.
And that's the hardest thing to do as a home brewer when you're doing like single 1 gallon batches. And that's so a couple of the Mead forums, even when I started out, it was, if you make a great 1 gallon batch, you wish you'd made 5. And if you made a really crappy 5 gallon batch, you would wish you'd made 1. So even if you did a 3, it's still a slippery slope. You wish you had more of the good stuff, and you wish you had less of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Can totally relate to that too. Yeah, and honestly, I have some mead making experiences as well. We'll get to that throughout the show here. But for whatever reason, I have found myself more comfortable making 5-gallon batches of mead than your traditional 1 gallons.
Sure.
And I don't quite know what to attribute that to, especially because I belong to some winemaking and mead making forums on social media, and all the pictures that they post are all in either 1/2 gallon or 1 gallon growlers,
Sure.
with your regular airlock on top, and photos can be great. Something about that just has kept me from diving in further. I don't know what it is. Before we go any further,
You're missing a whole bunch.
I'm missing a whole bunch of things. What are you drinking tonight, sir?
Me? I'm on a little bit of a break from drinking mead. I was out doing deliveries today, so I picked up something from Foreign Exchange.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
What kind is that?
It's the Palate.
Palate.
Okay. Does it say what kind it is? I'm not familiar with that. Pale ale?
Milkshake double IPA. It has Idaho 7, Eldorado, and Citra hopped. Normally I drink during something like this, but I've been on a beer kick lately. Like the Modern Mead Makers on Facebook, every Friday night they do mead toast, and I've been a part of a few of them. But it's summer, and I've been on kind of a beer kick, and I've never been a huge IPA fan, and lately there's just been IPAs that have just been catching my eye, and I was like, let's give it a whirl.
Yeah, we've been talking about that, saying that the concept of an IPA has really evolved in recent memory. It's no longer just the West Coast hop bomb that it used to be. They've really gotten a lot of character recently.
Which is really neat. It's a neat evolution. If you'd asked me 10 years ago to drink an IPA, I'd slide it back to you or tell you to go pound sand. Nicely.
True enough. Yeah, you and me both.
Yep. George and I 5 years ago, that's what we were.
There's just something about drinking something bitter I don't love. So I can do a little of something, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, if you want
so Jason, what about you?
Go ahead.
On the bitterness note, and also to George's point about the evolving definition of an IPA, I am drinking a Hop Butcher.
Okay.
Which is in the New England double IPA category, and the hop. Let's see, the hop combination of this is Mosaic and Sabro hopped double IPA.
Mosaic and Sabro. Okay.
And what you were saying, Brian, about a beer kick. Ever since the beginning of the quarantine, I have just dove headfirst into the New Englands, and I didn't totally set out to do that, but it's a flavor that just has caught me. I will go out and say that like dark beer is kind of my beer core, and that's my common go-to.
Sure.
So this is a step in a very different direction, obviously, but hey, you like what you like, right?
For sure. I mean, I'm exploring. I'm normally an American wheat, blonde. Those are I like a lot of the lighter beers, and some some of the lighter sour beers, like your Gozas and your Berliners.
Okay, nice. What do you got tonight, George?
I've got Das Yummy, which, if you remember, it's a Berliner Weiss ale with apricot, ginger, cinnamon, vanilla, and lactose. So I'm right there with you on the whole milkshake lactose kind of train with this. But
Nice.
I mean, you guys are talking about diving into different things. Since all this started, my exploration has really been around sours and along those lines. So not all super sour beers, but ones with sour notes to them. Trying that out because it's one I've not made yet, and it's something I'm curious to try.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, back to Mead.
Back to Mead.
All right.
Since we're talking about sours, I've actually got a non-sack yeast that I play with. I threw it at a Brazilian acacia honey last year, or was it 2 years ago now? It was really sour, or not sour, but tart is like that borderline where you go from tart to sour. And it drank really well, just being a traditional. It didn't drink like a traditional mead. It kind of borderline hit the almost. Some people would say it was sour, but it was more tart. So it's one of the ones that I want to bring back. I've got the honey. I just need to reorder the yeast and get it going and play with.
Do you have I was going to save this for later on, but I think this is a good point now. Do you have a go-to mead yeast?
I do. It's in the Quebec family.
In the Quebec. Okay. All right. That was the this year's Big Brew Day recipe was a Quebec.
Okay.
And of course, Quebec ferments hot, and with that comes a very unique flavor.
For sure.
That's interesting. You can use a Quebec for mead too. I'm hearing that for the first time.
Yeah.
Because we will.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say I had been experimenting with it while I was a home brewer, and it's kind of one of the more popular. It's the current hot yeast to use, if you will, or the popular yeast. I told a couple people about it, and it's slowly my little trade secret worked its way out into the home brewer side, which is totally fine because I don't mind if people are making better mead at home, because then it just leads people to go, oh, let's try more mead that's available commercially.
That is true.
So, I mean, there are certain standard wine yeasts that a lot of meaderies use, and I mean, why not try something different and try to make mead more palatable as a home brewer? Because, like I said, I've made some hot garbage, and I've shared a couple bad bottles as a home brewer, and that's the thing you don't do after a while when you're like, hey, I want to go pro, and they're like, yeah, no, you should probably not, and not making this crap again.
Right.
If I remember correctly, because George and I made a strawberry mead 5 years ago. It was our first. Foray into mead making. There's been a couple of them since. If I remember correctly, we fermented that mead using D47. No, really?
I hate that yeast.
Why is that?
Great. It's one of my hot liquid garbage ones I made.
Oh, okay. Was it just one batch went bad and never went back?
Temp control, it's huge for that yeast. I know there's one commercial meadery. They're like, yeah, we run that thing up really hot, and they seem to do well with it. And there's a temperature where it doesn't work out or is just stressed. But I've ran with it several times, and I was not impressed with it. So I kind of ran through the rest of the mead yeasts and then started experimenting with some of the ale yeast, and then just happened to trip over some of the Quebec yeast that Omega was offering at one of the brew stores in the area.
Nice.
Yeah, because I think the last time we made it, and you may have touched on this, but we used champagne yeast, right?
D47.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian's response to that was blah.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So that one, all right. No,
that's on my generalist.
So let me. Well, when you talk about or products going in a direction you didn't expect them to, the first mead recipe was one of those for George and I. And I'll tell you the whole story. It's a pretty funny one in retrospect. So the plan was we were going to make a strawberry flavored mead. So what we did with the strawberries is we blended them into a puree, mixed the strawberries together with the honey and the water, and brought it down till it filled up 2 growlers. Without thinking to ourselves, this is all fermentable sugars. So we dumped a packet of yeast across 2 growlers, with this really, really now dense liquid of both strawberry sugar and honey sugar, and the yeast just had a field day. We went out to dinner, me and George, and we came back to the house maybe 2 or 3 hours later. The 2 growlers were sitting on my kitchen counter, and the whole kitchen was a disaster. Yep.
Yeah.
Volcano.
Yeah.
We didn't take an original gravity reading before we left that day, but I can only imagine just how much alcohol was fermented out of that.
I wouldn't be shocked if it was like over 1.1,
I would think
how much
it was.
sugar we put in there.
I'm pretty sure it was, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we learned our lesson from that one.
Yes, secondary. Stabilize and secondary.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, yeah, it raises a good question. Do you get caught up in the whole mead versus melomel thing, or is it all mead? Do you guys do melomel?
We do melomels. It's a subcategory of mead, so it's like you got your beers, and you got all the beers underneath it, your stouts, your porters, your pilsners. It's just a subcategory. Mead is its own lane, and then you bust it up into like methylglens and melomels and all the other categories.
Okay, yeah, because I've run into a few people where when you talk about mead and you say, "Oh, I threw some strawberries in my mead," they're like, "Oh no, that's not mead. That's a melomel." And I'm like,
it's just a style. It's a style of mead. So
yeah, but it's still a mead, right? So yeah. I wasn't sure how prevalent that was.
And then on the commercial side, a lot of it is just arguing with the TTB on how you put the words at the bottom of your bottle for selling. So sometimes they have to say honey wine, and sometimes they have to say mead. It's just all a matter of when you put fruit in and your formulation. So that's a whole nother discussion for
no kidding.
Side, so
is there alcohol thresholds between mead and melomel also?
No, it's just a style. There's no alcohol threshold. I can make a melomel at 5%, or I can make a melomel at 20.
At 20. Okay. So okay, got it.
You'd have a 1% melomel, but
why?
Yeah,
that would be kombucha, right?
I guess. But kombucha is a whole different ballgame, which I can't speak to. I like drinking some kombuchas, but I haven't personally made any.
Yeah, yeah, I know, because I think I've read, if you look at a kombucha bottle, it'll say that there's a maximum alcohol of like 0.25%.
There are some that have some alcohol in it. Like I've gotten carded at a health food store because it's one of those Albertsons little chains that are underneath the Jewel umbrella. So I didn't expect to get carded buying one of those. Granted, they had the special sticker on it, but you you go and grab it off the shelf, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, and you don't pay attention. As an adult, you're over 21, you stop looking and caring about, am I getting carded or not, and you just get to the counter, and she's like, I see your ID, and it's like, okay.
For kombucha.
For kombucha.
Kombucha.
It was like 4%. Didn't even notice. It was like a 3 or 4%er.
Well, that actually raises a decent question as far as like the meads that you make for sale at the shop there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you tend to do them a little bit more sessionable, the 5-6%, or are they a little bit higher?
So I've been at the 7% range only because that's the lowest threshold for the TTB. So when you go below 7, you kind of fall out of their purview. You fall under there's there's 2 sandboxes you can fall in when you make mead. If you go 6.9 or below, you're more under the FDA's discretion, but 7.0 and above. So then labeling. So a lot of it has to do with labeling, how much carbonation you do. So I'm actually looking into pushing below 7 here soon and actually start canning. So it's I've been kind of all over the map. I tried to hold at 7. I've had some 9s, some 10s, some 11s. Pushing up higher on the higher end for the wine bottles, and then after the second batch of Strawberry Forager coming out next week, I'm actually going to probably start canning.
Okay. And so, what is your typical development run for a style look like? Because from what Jason's and I experienced was that was a terrible sentence, but we found that it ferments quickly, but that it needs time to age. So how do you guys typically work that?
As soon as it's done fermenting, I get it cleared. I'll add the fruit, or if I didn't add fruit up front, like the goal is to get it clear. My experience with working with some of these kveikis is as soon as it's done fermenting and I either add fruit or I had fruit up front, I get it cleared, I filter, then get it cleared, and then I package it. So as soon as it's ready to go into a bottle, get into a bottle. So sometimes it could be a 3-week turnaround. Sometimes it could be a 6 to 9-week turnaround. But being that honey's not cheap and there's a lot of money tied up in a 200-gallon batch, it's pretty much get it on the shelf. Now, will they age well? For sure. Then it's one of the questions I get at a lot of liquor stores. How long is this good for? Am I going to throw it out in a month or two? I go, sit there for a couple of years. I don't want it to sit there for a couple of years because I want it to move and keep selling you more. So, so as soon as it's ready, turn it around. So like the green tomato lemon mead that I made, it's called Love Apple. I wanted to have that out back in the fall, but I also was driving a truck almost full time at night. So it kind of getting that out the door kind of slid on me hard. So that's why I've been out there getting it into a lot of the stores in the Chicago area here over the last couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. So are you planning on, like, it seems like mead, if you have like some staple styles that you guys make, it seems like it'd be a really good candidate to have like a vertical, each year,
sure.
reserve some and do some side-by-side comparisons.
Absolutely. I've got a little, I'm trying, that's one of those things I'm working on. It's just, I still feel like I'm in startup mode, even though I'm not. I've been open almost 2 years, but and I've heard other mead makers say it, pretty much everything goes out the door. So you got money coming back in. So you're making more stuff and you keeping the lights on. I do keep several bottles back out of each batch, mainly for competitions, but usually when the competition rolls around, I'm already past that batch and on to something else. So verticals would be nice to do. It's something that could happen in the future. I have one called Cherry Bomber. I've got 2 kegs of it. I'm going to oak and fortify, and then I also have 30 gallons of it sitting in a Whiskey Acres barrel. So kind of playing with the airplane theme. So Cherry Bomber is just it's a 9.5%. I used buckwheat honey and honeydew honey. I used Montmorency cherries and put a little touch of oak to it. And then thinking the one in the Whiskey Acres barrel is probably going to get called Cherry Flying Fortress just to keep running with the airplane theme. And then we have a working title for the fortified one that I'm not fully set on yet.
Okay.
Is there a rule of thumb as to how long fruit should be on a flavored mead for?
You want to get it off before it gets nasty, but a lot of it is just by taste. So if you're putting it up front, long as it's good. Once ferment's done, I mean, if you got in there for maceration and getting color, like with your blueberries and a lot of your darker fruits, you get your color from it. But if you're getting mold and whatnot, you get that stuff out of there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one concern. If you have a lot of headspace in your carboy or your tank, or your airlock goes dry, those are a lot of concerns. Or fruit flies get in. Fruit flies have little nasty buggers that can get you a really ugly pellicle going if you forget that you have it going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I get that.
You had mentioned a couple different varieties of honey. Like, it's one of those things, like when we're brewing beer, we put in different varieties of grains to get different flavors and different colors and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is that to figure out as far as what balance you want? Do you have like kind of a staple thing that you riff on, or is it kind of, how hard is it to get to know those different ingredients?
A lot of the time it's just buying a small 1 pound bottle and tasting it. Other times I know just from homebrewing what those flavors bring. Like, there are two different styles of buckwheat honey. There's East Coast and West Coast. The Western buckwheat is when we jump back to East Coast, not East Coast, West Coast, but Eastern buckwheat tends to smell and taste like horse blanket is the common
Okay.
referral for that one. And I haven't actually had it in Western buckwheat. And they're just two different species of buckwheat of the grain. Jason, are we still recording?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Gotcha. So they're just two different styles of honey. You can almost look at honey as almost a variety of grape, in that each honey is going to have its own characteristics. Like wildflower is just a catch-all for where the bees went. Most beekeepers don't run their bees from like a almond orchard over to an avocado orchard. Like, that's how you can know, hey, this is avocado blossom honey or almond blossom honey, is because they moved their bees from one orchard to another. So
Okay.
the monoculture crops that we do in America.
Are you a
So,
beekeeper as well?
I was going to ask that.
Yes, I have a hive on top of the roof. It was a captured swarm I got last year. It made it through the winter. I need to go up there and check on it. It was kind of struggling. It barely made it through the winter. So it's kind of not on the stronger side. So I'm hoping the numbers pick up on it, because last year you could see the bees on the roof just coming and going like crazy. And this year it's just like you see some of them, but it's not as strong as it was.
I'm sure George has a lot of questions on that front, because he has aspirations about keeping his own bees.
I do. I've got a couple acres of land out in the country, and obviously there's a lot of trees and wildflowers and things like that around. So I think it'd be a good area for them. And mead is one of those things I have an interest in. So I thought if I could have some bees, create some honey, I could, try to make some mead. Not to mention, we have some allergies. We get some allergies in the house, and so that's super good for that too.
For sure.
So, yeah. But I won't take us down that particular rabbit hole right now.
I would like to take a bigger head dive into it, except I wear a lot of hats around here, and I'm starting to take them off. So when I can do that, that's something I would like to spend a little more time with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost a second job on top of doing the mead. So,
oh, sure.
Because I probably had, since I've opened, a half a dozen people in the area come to me and they're like, "Oh, you can put bees on my property." It's like, that's cool. It's a lot of work, and I'm not ready to do that yet, but totally want to. It's one of those things that'll come in time.
Yeah.
Because right now the biggest thing is just building a brand and just getting awareness and selling more mead.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're one of only a few. Do you know offhand how many meaderies there are in Illinois?
I would say maybe 10 or less.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's what I was thinking.
Like, there's more. I think it's between 500 and 600 in the country. I know there's a few in the Chicagoland area, and there's a couple downstate, and there's more coming online this year that I know of. So I think if we're not at 10, we'll be at 10 here pretty quick.
There's a lot of room for growth, I think.
Absolutely.
Because I think people are starting to gain a better understanding of what mead is.
Mhm.
And, the access right now to it is still relatively limited.
For sure.
So the ones that are around right now, I think good things are ahead.
Absolutely. And it's a rising tide raises all boats. Because I've had a couple of people are like, "Are you worried about more meaderies?" I go, "No, I welcome it. Then people can try their stuff, come over, try my stuff." And it's like finding beers you like and breweries you like.
It really is the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There was concern because I remember, Georgia, we started doing this, our podcast back in 2015. And that was one of the early years of the rise in craft beer. And even dating back to 2015, there was questions that was coming up about, this is growing so fast. How long can we maintain this for? Here we
Right.
are in 2020, and craft beer, I mean, we still see that as the growth area that it still continues to be. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a lesson to us.
For sure.
Yeah.
Turns out people like to drink.
Especially
imagine that.
Yeah, so when the state kind of basically shut down all the businesses, I had somebody come in the first Saturday of like, "Hey, you can't go anywhere." I had my open sign on, and an older gentleman came in. He's like, "Why in the F are you still open?" I go, "I'm an essential business," and I kind of shrugged at him. I go, "It's kind of weird, but here I am," and he just shook his head and walked out.
So, what's the when you start messing around with different adjuncts in mead, you can get pretty creative. I've seen some pretty creative recipes out there.
For sure.
What is anyone that you're particularly proud of, or that was a big risk that paid off that you would like to talk about?
I haven't really had any big risks that have paid off, but I played with hibiscus and pink peppercorns. So I had those as a blend together, and I actually won an award on that mead. It's called lip gloss and gunpowder. So it's a nice pink rosé style looking one.
Nice.
The dry version, it won as a dry version, but it wasn't selling very well. So I ended up back sweetening it just a little bit, and it definitely has become one of the top 5 sellers I have right now.
So with wine, typically you put, what was that chemical you put in, Jason? Or potassium sorbate?
To stabilize? Yeah.
Well,
To stabilize it?
Put in potassium metabisulfite because that kills the yeast, and the sorbate basically says if you didn't die, you're not going to reproduce.
Okay, so you do put
Sulfite
potassium. Okay, sulfite and sorbate. All right, into it.
That's how you don't end up having bottles exploding on the shelf.
Bottle bombs. Yeah.
Bottle bombs or floaty cans. Like I've seen a few breweries have cans that are kind of bloaty or whatnot, but a lot of it's also in a function of pH, because pH has a little bit to do with the range of how much sulfite you can be putting in it too.
So hibiscus is one of those things, like when because one of the ones that was an early introduction for me for commercial meads was Viking's Blood.
Okay.
And it is, it's a hibiscus mead. And so that is something that has been appealing to me. And I've been thinking about, how do you add hibiscus to it? Because I can't imagine it's as easy as just chucking the flowers in and hoping for the best. I mean, do you have to?
I get a giant hop sack and load it in and let it sit there and float. And as soon as it hits, it's adding all the red color and the flavor. It's almost immediate with the color being pulled out of it.
Huh. Okay, so it does work like saffron, kind of. It goes in and just. Huh?
I was gonna say I can't attest. I haven't used saffron. It's really expensive, and I can't.
Oh, I just meant like when you're cooking. You kind of throw some in and it kind of bleeds out. But
sure.
Okay, so you add it kind of like a hop addition.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And how long does it typically take to infuse?
I let it sit for about anywhere between 4 to 7 days, kind of like a hop, just till I get the color I want, the flavor I want, because I don't want it sitting in there forever.
Right.
And it's also, and it's a function of just being a business, trying to turn the tank as fast as I can without making garbage.
Right.
And then I actually don't boil anything here. Like it's just I pump. I'm doing a continuously pump over of water as I add the honey, so my pump is mixing the honey and water in together. So I've had a couple of people watch. They're like, "Well, don't you need to boil water and all that?" I'm like, "Nope. Just get the fork truck and start pouring honey in from a barrel or standing on a platform and dumping in 5-gallon buckets in as water.
And just making sure everything's sanitized.
Oh yeah, for sure. Big thing.
Yeah. So I've heard that, there's some argument about whether or not you need to pasteurize, mead. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm not in that camp. You can if you want. I'm sure it's something I wouldn't mind doing down the road because then for sure that you're not sending something out the door that could be a potential problem.
Okay.
I know there's a meadery out in Colorado that does it. If you have a cross-flow filter, that would eliminate that problem right there where you don't even have to pasteurize, as I understand, because the cross-flow goes down to super tiny, like I can't remember what the lowest micron is on that, but if you wanted to, while it's in the middle of fermenting, you can drag it across that like 1020 and have that sweetness. But that's probably a $40,000 rig that is just not my budget yet as a small guy.
Nope, gotcha. I understand. Okay, all right, that's interesting. Yeah.
How many varieties do you have available?
At the moment, let's see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 right now that I have available.
All right.
Not bad.
Can you rattle off a couple of the flavors that are available?
So I've got Cherry Bomber. I've got 2 Bouchers right now. One is with Montmorency cherries. The other is with dates and raisins. I have Love Apple, which is the green tomato. I have a few bottles of Cherry Limeade left. A couple Blackberry Forager, Lip Gloss and Gunpowder. And then I've got a few on the horizon that'll be coming out here in the next couple of weeks. Like my goal is to have Strawberry Forager ready because that's going to be in the thing that the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild is going to be doing for their fundraiser in July.
Okay.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you reopen to the public last week?
Yes and no. I mean, I scooted my hours earlier in the day because I was just having bottle shop hours, come in, get a bottle, get out from 5 to 6. I'm still kind of doing that. I do it from 1 to 3 now on Saturdays. It's come in, get a bottle. The village wanted me to submit my plan for having my beer garden for what I was going to do with it, and I haven't done it. I just basically told them I'm selling bottles for the time being. So
gotcha.
I've got a 16-month at home. My wife teaches when they were still school. So Livingston County has been pretty good. They had some cases, but it hasn't been prolific like up in the city. So I'd rather not risk it just because people do come down from Chicago and they come up from Bloomington and whatnot. So Dwight's kind of a destination place if you're traveling Route 66 or there's restaurants you want to go to, or maybe you want to come to Unpossible Mead. So
why wouldn't you?
Right. Dwight's pretty much dead nuts halfway between Chicago and Bloomington on 55.
That's true. I remember that. I used to drive down to Winchester about like every other month.
Oh, look who we have here.
There
what's
he
up,
is.
Polly?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Polly.
Hey, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm good.
Sorry, I was a little late.
That's all right. We just been interrogating Brian.
I was I can't
You were
wait to hear it, but I was canning look at West Coast or West Park IPA from a local brewery in Joliet.
Okay.
And that's what I was doing. So
it's a nice label.
It is. I got a little sidetracked. It happens. Sorry.
That's all right.
Most of you guys know.
All
That
good.
is all
All
right,
good. We
sir.
were just talking about the quarantine and what reopening means to Unpossible Mead. So, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
So we got it.
So I was just going to add, I shut the tasting room 2 weeks before Governor Pritzker shut down the state. I was like, we don't know where this is going to go, and I kind of want to be safe. Don't want to get anybody at home sick. And then when they did kind of shut the state down, I started taking all my kegs and bottling them because I had a good handful of kegs sitting around. And it was like, don't think bars are going to be buying these anytime soon. And
Sure.
meat sitting in a keg is no different than meat sitting in a glass bottle. So I took 2 or 3 days, just a couple of family and friends helping me just get everything bottled up. And I had to order not new labels, but more labels to get everything ready to send out to liquor stores. So it's definitely shifted. my focus on business. Like the tasting room brings in a certain percentage, and outside sales has completely gone lopsided to the liquor stores.
Yeah, we've heard that story from a lot of people recently, and it's been a lot of people just adapting to the situation.
For sure.
You actually bring up an interesting thought, is that how is the kegging process for, I'm assuming your meat is still and not carbonated, right? Okay. So how's the kegging process different as far as serving? Because I can't imagine you want it at the same pressure you would for like a beer, because you don't want it to get carbonated, right?
If it happens, it happens. Some places that have nitrogen, I'll tell them put on nitrogen, or just basically need enough pressure to push, but it just depends on the place and what the regulators are at. But I just tell them, I go, if you can push just enough to not carbonate it, that's cool. I know the government doesn't love the idea of it accidentally getting carbonated, because then that's tax dollars they're not getting. So
because it falls under soda at that point.
So if you go above 2 atmospheres on mead, then you enter champagne tax territory.
Oh,
it's a holdover from prohibition to punish the rich people after prohibition. It was punish rich people, but it was also because, like, you know, they were bringing wine in from France and it was highly carbonated, and that's like, hey, that's the way we can punish rich people, is we're gonna tax the crap out of what they're importing. So
never heard that.
That's interesting.
So it adds more.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we're trying to lobby to get changed. So we're kind of the redhead stepchild with the TTB. So we're slowly just, you know, we're trying to get them to understand where we're coming from and what we're doing, and just, you know, help our industry grow.
So a lot of what you guys are running into from a regulation and tax perspective is based more around wine than anything else, right?
For sure. I mean, I have a wine license from the feds and from the state of Illinois, so that's what I operate under.
Okay. So
that's why if you ever see a bottle that says honey wine, it's still mead. It's just there's certain things going on, or it's just you know what the formulation was, or it just depends on the person that was reviewing that label that day and said, no, you can't call this mead.
Okay.
Wow.
What kind of kegs do you keep it in? Is it 5-gallon soda kegs?
So in-house, I have the stainless kegs, but when I send it out, it's the plastic uni kegs that look like soda kegs.
Okay.
Or not the soda kegs. I'm sorry, it's the plastic uni kegs. So I don't use soda kegs. I use the standard Sankey D's here.
Huh. Okay. And to keep below that threshold, do you keep a pressure of like 3 or even 4, like PSI, something like that?
Something like that, something low. Sometimes I'll goose the keg a little bit at the beginning of the night, just put some head pressure on the kegs, and then I can just turn it off and it'll ride the night.
So is the process to that just moving the meat into the keg, giving it a quick blast and purging the oxygen, and then just bringing that down to 3 or 4?
Well, so I gravity fill the kegs, so I'm not pushing. Like you'll see a lot of the breweries will push with CO2 to get their beer into a keg. I use gravity to fill my kegs.
Okay. But even so, when you put that initial the initial hit of CO2 on it, are you doing the oxygen purge?
Yes.
It's right at first. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And then just enough pressure to push it through the tubes. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I have long made what I always considered, and Brian, I'd be interested in your take on this. I will say without any hesitation that mead making and wine making is easier than beer making. And I'd say that in front of anybody.
Fun.
I don't have to spend the whole. I mean, you still got to sanitize. I mean, you still have the same rigors. You gotta clean. You gotta sanitize. You gotta make sure it's good. Yeah. But I'm not hucking grain out of a.
True.
I'm not pulling grain out of a vessel. I get done. I clean everything up and I go home. I'm not going, well, what the hell am I going to do with all this grain? The farmer's going to grab it and they'll shove it in the dumpster.
Yep. There's less temperature control because you're not measuring mash temperatures and you know and boiling for a set amount of time too. Yeah, there's just a lot of steps that just aren't involved when you.
And it's pretty awesome.
That's what I think so too. Yeah. Yeah, I make an annual trip to Wisconsin for grapes, and we make a wine batch from that, and I love it. I think it's great. So we bring the smashed grapes from Wisconsin up down here to Illinois, and we handle everything from fermentation on all the way to bottling.
Do you know what type of grapes you're getting, or you just get whatever they have? Or?
Yeah, so the vineyard itself has about 9 to 12 different grapes in the variety,
Okay,
but each year the crop is different. So certain varieties will be more plentiful than others.
for sure.
So the first year we did it, we what was it that we made? We did a red and a white, and Saint Pepin. Saint Pepin was the white that we did.
I love St. Pepin.
I thought it was great. Yeah, it made a really nice, not too sweet but not too dry white blend.
There's a winery in Western Iowa that I had, and it was just a road trip I was taking out west, and stopped by, picked up a bottle. It was amazing. I ended up buying a few more from them, but I came back the next year and I was like, this total variety is way different.
Yeah, nice.
So it's amazing year to year. It was like the first time was awesome. The second time I was like,
Yeah.
But yeah, St. Pepin's up there, like Catawba, St. Pepin. I'm not a Concord fan myself.
Yeah, I'm not really either, and I say that because partially because I mean Concord was kind of one of the last choices that I had last year, so we made a Concord red and a Concord white.
Okay.
It's not my favorite wine that I ever made, but that's kind of what they had.
Yeah.
Makes a good jelly.
Yeah, okay, sure. Foch was the other red that we made.
Okay.
And that was that came out a lot darker, and that one was pretty good. You know, with a good dinner, it matched well.
Nice. Something I learned last week. You know how you have like your pink Moscatos and your pink whatevers.
Yeah.
They just take the grape skins from Merlot, throw them in those batches just to color it and call it pink. That's all that is. Just marketing. Be like if I threw hibiscus in something.
Yeah.
It's my rosé today. Here you go.
I'm not totally shocked, but I've never heard anything like that.
It blew my mind. I was like, okay, because I wondered how the hell you get pink Moscato when there's no pink Moscato that I know of.
All good.
That's funny.
All good. I have what's left over. I have probably 6 to 7 pounds of honey left here at the house.
Okay. You could make a nice 1 gallon batch of that.
I would. Yeah, I was thinking so.
It'd be high gravity. It'd be definitely boozy.
I'm okay with that. More than okay with that.
Let's see, 6-7 pounds. 2, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It'd be boozy.
Well, you could make more than 1 gallon, couldn't you?
I mean, you can mix it up and then split it down into 2 batches.
Yeah, okay. But all that alcohol wasted.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Go big, go home.
Go big, there you go, Polly. Go big or go home.
I've noticed as a home brewer, and even on the commercial side, watching some of the mead making forums on social media, you can tell when somebody's new because they want to run up as high as they can with alcohol, and then you see a seasoned person, they'll try to make a nice, and they don't always not. Somebody who's been making mead longer will try to make a really nice sessional mead because it's something you can drink on a day like today. You can go out, mow the grass, whatever, sit on the porch, have 1 or 2, and not get rocked. Because that's one of the things I hear some people with some of the commercial meads, they're like, they're so sweet or they're so high alcohol, I can't only have like half a bottle or a glass and I got to put the cork back in it. So that's one of the things with having sessionable meads is it's, I wouldn't say necessarily a sign of a mature mead maker, but it can mark a point in somebody's career if you're watching them as a home brewer just making lower alcohol.
I go to a monthly homebrewers meetup, and there's a mead maker who brings mead to several of our meetings. And to your point, he does not bring any mead that's over 6%. Okay. Everything is between like 4 and 5.
He's been making it for a while too.
He absolutely has, and I'll tell you, the mead that he makes is delicious.
That's one of my regrets is not being part of a homebrewers group as a homebrewer. I was doing it solo, so I couldn't share and get feedback. Like I'd bring it to the homebrew store and see what they thought, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is good, this is good." And after a while, I brought them a bad one. They're like, This is not my favorite you've ever brought. I go, good, you're not bullshitting me. Because that was my worry. It's like, oh yeah, it's great. Like, nope, here's a bad one.
Yeah. No, that's one of
No,
many
at least the
pluses
one-
of being in a homebrew club, no question.
For sure.
Yeah, and
George,
the one
go ahead.
Jason's talking about, they didn't pull punches. Like if you
Oh,
brought
no.
in something that was bad, they'd be like, so something went wrong here. Let's try to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
and,
Oh yeah.
and dissect it. Yeah.
For sure.
Because the way that they did it is they do a round table, and each person has their moment where they serve whatever it is they brought. Everybody tasted it at the same time, and then it's a round table discussion about what was right about it, what was wrong about it, and you know, under the right circumstances, they'll give you some advice about what you can do differently.
For sure. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, and there's things you guys worry about in beer we don't necessarily have to worry about in mead. Like SRM is not a concern.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, your honey's dark. Cool. Wasn't shooting for a style. It's just that's what the honey looked like. So here you go.
Yeah.
So the
Well,
beer-
one of the things that is
You got no IBUs either.
what's
No
that?
IBUs unless you're doing IBUs,
Right.
internal brewing unit.
Right.
You'll have that with me.
Not really. No, not unless you're. I mean, I've made an IPA style mead, and I know there's a couple other meaderies that have made an IPA style mead. So you take a small batch of honey and water, and that's when you actually would boil, and then you do your hop schedule, and then you blend that into a batch of or a must from another, and then get it going. So that's a trick that I've learned, and so that's one way. That's one time you would probably bring an IBU over.
Is there an equivalent
That's good.
of a water profile for mead, or is there any relevance to that?
Oh yeah, if your water tastes like shit, you're not gonna want to use it. Dwight has hard water, so I don't use it. I actually go to the next town south on 66, and they have a reverse osmosis station. One local farmers told me about it, so I go down there and get a tote of their RO water, bring it back, pump in the tank, and get rolling with it. So if your water is super hard, it's honestly at the end of the day, if your water tastes good, roll with it.
So do you do salt additions to that RO water?
I don't.
You just go right in with the RO with no minerals?
No minerals.
Wow. Okay.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
So
There's been one or two times that I have buffered with potassium bicarbonate just because I was watching the pH sink faster than normal with some of the yeast strains I've used.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't buffer.
Can you talk a little bit about how pH applies in mead making?
So pH is it's trying to think. In terms of fermenting, you're going to watch your pH drop a couple points. I've had some wild yeast strains that have dropped the pH to 2.89 as a finished product. If I buffered a little bit more, I probably could have got a couple more ABV points out of it. But just like beer, you're going to watch, as your yeast ferment, you're going to watch your pH drop. So by buffering, you're giving the yeast a little bit of room to not get in an environment where the ferment's going to get stuck.
okay.
So there's a correlation there between how the pH reacts to the fermentation and
Correct.
it getting stuck. Okay. Yeah. Okay, got it.
I'm getting a little hot, so my brain.
I do. No, all good. All good. I've got an air conditioner like sitting 10 feet from me, so this room is always just nasty cold. So it can be 90 degrees outside. I'll be sitting here in a hoodie and my winter hat.
Nice. I've got two kegerators.
It's the opposite problem.
Yeah, that's why I'm all sweaty.
So one of the things I've noticed is kind of correlates to beer making a little bit is body in a mead. Some meads are a little thinner, and some meads are a little bit more full bodied.
Sure.
How do you achieve those different? Is that based on the honey or how much or?
Part of that is based on how much honey is in the final product. Some of it's also related to some of like the polyphenols that the yeast strains kick out, so help them give it some body. But some of your session meads, if you're not back sweetening or adding fruit, that's where you're going to lose out on some of your body.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So are you saying that the ones that are back sweetened are probably going to be fuller bodied?
Yes.
Okay.
You're adding viscosity back to it when you do that.
That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, it does. So do you back sweeten with like a syrup, or with you dissolve like just regular sugar, or how do you typically do that?
I typically back sweeten with the honey that I used on the front end. So if it was a wildflower honey for some of these session meads that I do, I'll back sweeten with that same honey.
Okay.
I have a Basswood Traditional. I'll ferment that dry, stabilize, add some of the honey back in on the back end to bring some body back, and also give a little bit of that initial, say like Basswood Blossom honey. That's one of the traditionals I make. I'll add some of the Basswood on the after stabilizing.
Okay. It's interesting.
What other questions?
I'm kind of a loss of words here because I've only made one mead batch ever in my life with Jason. And I'm hearing all this stuff, so like I'm trying to soak it in. So when me and Jason make our next mead batch on Thanksgiving weekend, right, Jason?
Thanksgiving weekend. Noted. I'm going to have one batch done before then. And we were just talking about my 6 to 7 pounds left, and I've got to make use of that because I'm kind of itching to make something.
Because it's only 5 months from now. Yeah.
Fine. Well, I mean, at least, so, but yeah, to Paulie's point, yes, we made, we made just kind of a bare bones mead, 5-gallon batch. And want to talk a little bit about how we put it together, Paulie?
Yeah, sure, for sure. Like we both had honey, and I knew a guy from a place that I go to that owns a farm that does farmers markets, and he's got a bunch of honey. I'm like, I got 15 pounds, and this is what I was thought. And then I held on to it for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And then we finally made this mead. And then when I showed up to Jason's house, I show up with the things. He's like, I got the same mead that you have. And
same honey from the same farm.
Yeah, you're right.
And we bought it at 2 different places. I bought mine from a blueberry farm in Indiana. And they brought it over from the same place. I don't think it's any secret. It was in Frankfurt.
Oh, I know that place. They put their bees down in Essex for I think it's Tanneman Treeberry Farm is one of the places they also put their bees.
Okay.
Botwell. It was Botwell.
So, anyways,
Botwell is sorry. Botwell Farms.
I don't recall.
It was. I know.
Okay.
All right.
So we did one thing with this mead that may be controversial, and it relates to the back sweetening, because we decided to fill all the mead into half-gallon growlers, and we spread all the half gallons across the different varieties that we were making. We kept several of them pure, and then we flavored several of them using flavored extract from Brew and Grow.
Okay.
So many people would probably call that cheating. That's just what we did.
If you like it at the end of the day, that's what matters. If you enjoy drinking it,
I'm totally on board with that. And we
like
were, yeah. And we were very careful in measurements. So we would pour out little samples of just the meat itself. Sure. And then we just did, tiny little additions of the extract, just trying to get the ratio right.
Sure.
And that's how we ended up building it. And I wouldn't have changed that. Because I think we found the right balance. We filled it all, and Paulie was a happy beverage liaison at the Bluegrass Fest that year.
Oh, Jason, you were there the day after. I got a ride home. How about that?
Brian, are you a regular
probably-
attendee of the Bluegrass Fest?
Say that again.
Are you a regular attendee of the annual Bluegrass Fest?
I have not been. I have. I'm not
Alright.
opposed to go, and I'm just, bluegrass is not one of the genres of music I personally listen to very often, but I wouldn't be opposed to going.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I've never really seeked out bluegrass. I went to the festival for the first time in 2018,
Okay.
partially at Paulie's urging, and I am so glad I did because it's just a blast.
Nice. I had somebody tell me about that the other day that I need to go there when the world opens back up.
Yes, I will second that as well. It's well worth going. Yeah, the city of Frankfurt really does a great job with that festival.
Nice.
But anyways, Paulie's got a second job, and he holds the title of the beverage liaison for the annual Frankfurt Bluegrass Festival. And that was an early motivation behind the Mead, was for the Mead to be an addition to the beverages available for the Bluegrass Festival.
That's cool.
And people were happy, Paulie.
Oh, they were. So there's one band, granted this would have been the 10th year. There was one band that was actually been there the whole time. Special Consensus. And like I always did my thing because all the stuff I get backstage for the musicians and volunteers, we had a nice spread back there. And then I started off brewing my own beer. And a few years ago, I'm reaching out to breweries and people are just donating stuff. And every year, like my little homebrew thing is like I do what I call the Special Consensus, which is a band from that plays the festival. I'm like, here's my idea. Here's your options. Let's roll with it. And a couple of times, I made something from that. And I think one of those was the Mead that we made, Jason. That was actually the Special Consensus Mead.
There was at least 4 or 5 varieties of our Mead there that day.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, you showed up the day after. Whatever, it is what it is. No, I actually remember sitting there with a band going, I'm like, which one's yours? Like, we don't care. They're all good. You pour another shot? I'm like, yes. I'll pour another shot for you. Well, it's still fun.
Great time. And the world will reopen sooner than later.
Of course.
Right?
Absolutely.
At least that's the hope. Yeah.
Oh, well, I hope it will.
Can't stop it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we'll see what the summer looks like. For Brian, summer's going to be like a lot of bottle sales, a lot of orders for bottle releases.
For sure. So next week I've got Strawberry Forager coming out, and then in a couple weeks I've got some barrel aged stuff coming out. One's a Star Thistle Blossom aged in few rye barrels with vanilla and maple syrup.
Oh, that sounds great!
Wow.
And then I've got a African Wildflower traditional mead aging in a Sleepy Bear barrel from Workforce. That's going to come out here. It's been aging for almost a year and a half, I want to say now.
Brando was just on the show a couple weeks ago.
I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brando loaned them to me.
So-
I think he's going to put Sleepy Bear back in this on when he gets it back.
After the Mead?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that's the plan.
Oh, wow, really?
And like my
That's
Bochet's
actually
all my
really
Bochet's are aged in Sleepy Bear barrels as well. So those have already been given back to Brando. I haven't heard when they're going to come out or his plans. So that's something you have to follow up Brando with.
Is that trained by you?
It's about 150 feet away. That's the UP line, and that was the Amtrak.
Right on. What were you going to say, George?
I was going to ask how the interaction between barrel aging works with wine and with mead. With beer, it can be overwhelming.
Well, it can be. A lot of it just has to do with what you're putting in and what you're getting out. Like, usually when you get it out of a barrel, you're gonna make sure you're gonna probably back sweeten, or you're gonna either add adjuncts, or you're gonna make sure the acid. You want to make sure your sweetness, your acid, your alcohol are in balance, or even sometimes they can be a little out of balance, which can give a certain flavor you're looking for. Like the Star Thistle Blossom that I aged in the rye barrels for Pew, it tastes like butter. Like if it was a beer, it'd be totally flawed because it's totally reminds me of diacetyl, but it's not offensive like diacetyl. So can be and the vanilla and the maple syrup, and it's gonna be really tasty. Like I'm super excited to get it out here soon.
Nice. Okay,
really,
so it sounds like it plays a little bit different than with beer.
for sure. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's more of a compliment than I think. And you can overdo wood too. Like I've over oaked a mead before, and that's kind of like where you just have to have hopefully a little extra on the traditional or whatever you got on the side, and you can just do blending and try to get that dial down how oaky it is. So a lot of it's by taste.
Okay.
So checking your Vinny nails, being that these were Sleepy Bear barrels. I knew that you're gonna have the stout notes to it. You're not gonna. There's more of a woody note from the barrel. You don't pick up so much the Sleepy Bear in it, but you do get the overall barrel notes from it. So,
Okay.
I haven't personally overdone one yet, so I hope I don't. But it's not saying it won't happen in the future.
Well, it sounds like you got dialed in pretty good, so
Yeah.
hopefully that keeps true.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you
That's
guys
interesting. I
on?
wouldn't have thought about.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I wouldn't have thought about barrel aging a mead, so that's an interesting thing.
And you can use those oak spirals and whatnot that you can get at the homebrew store to oak your mead.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to get some of that char, just whip out a torch and get it good and charred before you put in. I know guys that take the little oak cubes and they'll soak them in bourbon or what their favorite whiskey, and then they'll throw it in their mead. They're getting the oak and the bourbon. So that's
We've got that.
It's a quick and dirty. It's not dirty, but it's a quick and easy way to get your barrel aging done without having to go buy a barrel. Because I bought one barrel as a home brewer. I went out to it's a place in LeClaire, Mississippi River Distilling, and bought a barrel from them as a home brewer and did that. So it's kind of daunting when you want to have a 15-gallon bourbon barrel filled up with something.
Are you guys on Untapped?
We are. I'm not a huge fan of Untapped. I kind of have that brewer syndrome with people and their 1 stars. So
okay.
I have the brewer syndrome in that I don't love Untapped. But
The reviews just are too often unfair.
I've been it's not so much that, but you just see certain ones, and it's like I don't like melons, so your melon mead gets a 1 star. It's like
I get that.
1 star, your review, but it's all subjective, and it's people chasing hype beer. Or no, I'm not gonna say it's not people chasing hype beer. I used to be on Untapped as just a drinker. I had a buddy who's like, oh, you gotta do it. He's like, I want to see you're drinking, because it was when I was starting in a craft beer.
Yeah.
After a while, it's this. You're not enjoying your beer. You're busy plugging beers into your phone with shitty 3G service before 4G was out, and it's like, you just sit here and enjoy our beer and not worry about cataloging everything we've drank in the last 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah, no, that is well said.
But it's also I've seen some of the bars and some of the places I've gone into. The first thing they do is pull out their phone and start looking at reviews for what's out there that you've done. So it's a double-edged sword. It helps the bars, but it sucks as being the guy that makes it too when you see people shitting on something that's actually really good. But if there's actually one that's terrible, I've had a couple of meads I don't love that I've sold, but I primarily keep them in the tasting room for the regulars that do like it. But the number one thing is I don't push anything out the door that's junk. Yeah. So I don't know. I've been told by other mead makers, don't go read the comments. And I've done it once or twice, and I choose not to go back and relive that pain. Yeah. Yeah, for good reason. Yeah. If you want to have a bad day or make a bad day worse, go read your Untapped reviews.
Fair enough.
Or if you want a good laugh, when you got that mentality, like, yeah, screw you. You don't like me? Oh, really? You say that? Ah. But I got a million other people that love the argument that you're saying. If that makes any kind of sense.
It does. It's just there's people that have certain favorite places. They'll go out and one star something else because it's not their favorite place.
Yeah.
And it's
No, I get that. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
Yeah.
certain other review places are out there on the internet that I'm not going to mention because I don't feel like getting a cease and desist or whatever. But there's certain review places that a lot of people don't have very warm feelings about, and it just the people are people. They're going to crap on you or they're going to praise you. Everybody loves praise. Nobody wants to get crapped on, and that's what these apps do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, on a happier note, what do you guys have a go-to social media? Do you like Instagram or Twitter? Anything in particular?
I'm getting better at Instagram.
Okay.
Facebook's been kind of my go-to, but when I did a beer festival down at Mackinac Valley Vineyard down in Mackinac, outside of Bloomington, I was talking to their guy that does their social media, and he's like, "Hey, you can follow businesses, just don't follow people." He's like, "That's weird. It'll creep a few people out that you're following them." So I just stick to other meaderies, breweries, business related. So
Homebrew shows.
What's that?
Homebrew shows.
Homebrew shows.
Yeah.
Called a nice place to brew. There you go. All right.
So the Instagram game's getting stronger. Instagram's actually gotten me like a few more retail accounts, which has been awesome. More Facebook is just kind of like, hey, here I am, and this is what I'm doing.
Right.
So, I kind of at some point I'm gonna have a social media person taking care of me, but it's one of those things. As the hats come off, I'll be able to say, okay, you can do this for me now, so I can focus on making Mead on the business.
No, that's in my plans too for the webcast here. Yes, we'll at least have somebody wear the social media hat here. That's not going to be me.
Right. And
that would be nice.
Yes.
And it's kind of dangerous as being the owner. It's like, hey, my phone can blow up at any point in time where someone's like, hey, we want you to come sell to us, or hey, we got this problem with your business, or go ahead.
I guess what I would say to that is when that's a problem, you deal with it.
Correct.
But I mean, I think that's going to be I think that's going to be a good problem long before it's going to be a bad one.
For sure. And it's being an entrepreneur and running this place almost as a one-man show. I have helpers and volunteers, so I can't say it's all me, but I am the visible face, and I'd like to have my visible face, not have my foot stuck in my mouth. So
Sure.
I don't want to end up on certain beer blogs that are out there.
Yeah. So where can we best find you? Do you have a website, unpossiblemead.com?
Unpossiblemead.com, as of today? June 10th, 9th, whatever today is, 2020. The website is under construction. I'm switching platforms. So there is a link to be able to buy our meat online, so we can ship throughout the state of Illinois and to 37 other states.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. And your Instagram page, is it just under the business name?
Yes, Unpossible Mead, all one word. Unpossible Mead, no underscore.
Awesome. Okay. Before we close up, I'm going to ask a completely unrelated question to mead or beer making or anything of that sort. Are you a Simpsons fan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is that where the Unpossible name comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kind of thought maybe.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That
I need to know why. How?
And some guy goes, Simpsons? I was like, absolutely. And just smiled. He's like, you may go.
I tell you, you're in good company being around brewers and mead makers, because there's a lot of people that Paulie and I know that are very big on The Simpsons.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's all. Me fail English? That's Unpossible. Yes.
That was on Metal Monkey, if you click no for being 21, they the monkeys jumping on the bed on YouTube. I had somebody, if they'd click on no, they would go to Ralphie saying that on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm gonna find this. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's actually really funny.
Do you have any Simpsons memorabilia around the meadery?
I do not. Whatever I had in my my niece, who's now like 13 or 14, as she was growing up, she was totally into Simpsons because my brother-in-law loves the Simpsons. So I was slowly just gifting her all my Simpsons memorabilia.
Ah, gotcha. Very
Okay.
cool.
Now the big thing I have right now, like over my this shoulder, that's my kid from when he was 2 weeks old in a little honey pot. So
Oh, is that what that is? Oh, yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, look at that.
Oh
Okay.
my God! Oh, that's funny.
yeah. So he's wearing the hat. He's actually sitting in a giant geranium bucket, and the photographer photoshopped honey on it. So, and then my Father's Day gift, I know what it's going to be already because my wife's like, "What do you want for Father's Day?" I go, "I want the picture of my son when we first started doing the quarantine 6-packs." The Instagram ad was just the shipping box, and I put Mead mail on the thing, and it's going to be probably replacing that, and I'll move that to another spot in the meadery, but. He's just cute wearing my hat and standing right inside the box because his chin is just right with the flap. So that's sitting out there on Facebook and Instagram from back in March.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Good deal, man. Brian from Unpossible Mead. Thank you so much for joining the webcast tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we close up, we have our podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those places you get your podcast from under the name of Nice Place to Brew. We do this webcast every Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, available here on the YouTube channel and with all of our past episodes. And keep an eye out on social media for us and for our future shows. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. And before we close up, we raise a glass and do our one last send off. It takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Uncle Rick.